Okay, so wait, microphone. All right. So one's online, but it's okay. All right, I'm going to quickly run you guys through how to upload your podcast. It's fairly straightforward. We use Megaphone, which is part of sort of Spotify's ecosystem. Works really well, and we have a Phoenix Media account already. So the process will be either to, if you're on campus, whichever one I think is on campus, if you're on campus, to come in and it's a nightmare when you have to do this. I think that's all. Yeah, if you're on campus, come in, and there's a computer set up in the producer's room with it already logged in, and you can just go straight in and upload. Otherwise, if you're unable to do that and you've submitted your stuff into Study Desk, we can drop the files in as well. But it's better if you guys do it, because then you can add your descriptions for episodes and those sorts of things. Anyway, I'll log in and then show you what it looks like. So as you can sort of see here, the dashboard gives you a breakdown of all of the podcasts that are currently listed. So you've got yearly downloads up the top and monthly downloads for all of the podcasts that you've got on this platform. And then some of the other stats. So you can see Phoenix Radio Podcast has had 93 downloads over the last 30 days and 67 different listeners. And then some of the other ones haven't had any because they're probably a bit older and were released after the fact. So, but yeah, and you can sort of see the Chris and Alfie show does quite well across the board. And then the Laid Back Hour also has some listens as well. They sort of functioning as a catch-up radio more than a podcast sort of function. So anyway, so that's in the dashboard area. Primarily where you guys will be going is in podcasts. So on the left here, and then you'll see the podcast library. You've got a few options in here. The list basically is the list of the podcasts that are currently associated with Phoenix Media under the Phoenix Radio sort of banner. But the idea of getting you guys to upload your own podcasts is to not have you under the umbrella of the university, but just associated with the university. So that way you don't end up in a list of 799 other podcast episodes. You've got your own podcast with your own episodes in it. An example of that is if we have a look at this one here from one of the students from last year, you'll see that this is their podcast and this is, you know, a list of their episodes that they released. And you can see the status of them, when they were published, and the fact that they were imported just means that they came across from the original Phoenix Radio podcast. Whereas if they're just published out, they won't look like that specifically. You can continue to create episodes, or you can import them from other podcasts that you've got. So, for example, if you wanted to bring one in from Russell's Hero Time, you could select one of those and then actually bring it across into someone else's podcast. Just an option. You also have the options, obviously, to embed these podcasts, and it gives you a link that you can put into your website if you have a website. And yeah, you can go in and do editing of the podcast itself. So for example, with this one, if we hit edit podcast, you can change the title and the subtitle for it. You can change the cover art. You can give a summary of what the podcast is about, the network that it's involved with, the type of podcast it is, if you have a slug for that podcast, if you want to put a rating on it, what categories it's involved in, language, any advertising hashtags and things like that that you'd like to put in, and then any details about the author, i.e. if you had a website that you were associated with, then you could put that in as well and put your name in there. The email is just left as Phoenix Radio. I would just probably always put that in unless you wanted specifically to get any of the traffic mail that comes with that. Probably not. And then UniSQ is the author, and that is probably the most important one because that one goes into like underneath when you actually look at that. And I'll show you, I think I've shown you guys before, but I'll show it again here. It nicely sits under whatever you've created. So, you know, for you, Ruben, for example, unsung heroes, and then underneath it'll just have a little thing saying UniSQ, just so that it's like associated sort of thing. Yeah. All right. So anyway, let's go in and create a test one essentially so that you can see the process. So you just come in here and go to create podcast and then give it a title. I think before I give the title, I'll upload the picture, the cover art. So click on the link there, and then I've sort of mapped. Wait, maybe I should go in this way. I'm just dropping in this one, Sleepy Time Tales, sleep podcast. So following on from the example I was giving the other day about Gentle John's Sleepy Time Tales, or whatever I think I called it. And so just to show you what it sort of looks like, I'll fill out some of these details, not too crazy, but yeah, this is kind of where it would tie in with using what you guys have come up with in your proposal. So you would add in some of this information quite easily in here. A podcast that will help you get to sleep. And yeah, some of this stuff's already pre-filled out. Podcast category, I guess this would be maybe in stories for kids, I'm gonna say. Maybe that's probably a pretty good one because that's bedtime stories. And then other than that, I'll probably just put in Phoenix Radio and author UniSQ. And everything else is probably pretty good. So that's the basics of what you would probably do. And then once you've done that, just click save, and that will create that podcast. And if we go back just to podcast quickly, you can see that that now sits in the list. Network is Phoenix Radio, 0 episodes, category story for kids. Bless you.
They didn't take any history in this version.
Ah. All right. So anyway, once you've got an episode to actually upload, you can click on create episode. And this would be the first episode that you have. So I don't know, this one might be, let's say it's Jack and the Beanstalk. And we'll probably just call it F1 or something like that. F1, Jack and the Beanstalk. And I'm not really worried about any of this sort of thing, but I guess an episode summary, we could probably quickly grab a synopsis of Jack and the Beanstalk. Go back into when that thing drops away. Yes. Back in here. Anyway. And then season 1, episode 1. You could put some things in here as well if you wanted to. Sometimes people use, like, if it's for you guys later on in the semester, UniSQ goes back to school as one of the sort of hashtags that's involved in your OBs for the name of the school themselves, which is why these are all sort of sitting in here at the moment, because they're ones that, these are all just ones that people have done in the past. And then when you get to, well, you've got a few things you've got to do here. So in episode, upload episode, click upload, and then navigate to where you want to go. I've already mapped it somewhere else, so it's just easier for me to do it off screen. But just find, there's one in here. Yeah, so this will do. Maybe I can't do it like that. Okay. So we'll just grab one of these out of here. Oh, anything will be fine, I suppose. So yes, this will do, just because it's a piece of audio from a folder. Cool, and then it's done. And then basically, you can add an image if you want to that specific episode. Otherwise, it will just take whatever image you've had for the podcast itself. It's up to you if you want to design different episode logos or, you know, cover arts. Most people don't, but if it's something that you think might help enhance, you know, or reach more listeners, sure. Anyway, so you've got a few options here. You've got draft episode, which you could then sort of have sitting there without actually going anywhere, or you can schedule an episode for a certain time to actually just immediately publish at that time. Or if you want to just publish the episode straight away, right this second, I probably personally would go with the schedule episode option, just because that way you can have some social media around that to go, hey, my next episode drops at, you know, 6 p.m. on a Friday night. And then, you know, do a little bit of socials up towards that. Yeah, but basically you just select the time that you'd like to, you know, have this go out. So say it was, I don't know, 10 o'clock today, which is that. And then you could just hit save. And then at that time, it will publish. You can see what time it's going to be published, and then the fact that it's scheduled, it hasn't gone live yet. Once it has been published, it'll go to a little green circle and it'll say live. Yeah, so anyway, that's basically how your stuff will then get onto Spotify. And we'll just go to Spotify to have a look at what that looks like. Not that one specifically, because it takes, like, just for reference, it takes about 15 to 20 minutes for it to show up on Spotify. And if you make a change to it, it takes like 15 to 20 minutes for the change to also show on Spotify. So if you change the cover art, it'll take a bit of time. Nothing's very instant in that sort of regard. So but we'll have a look at look at the one that we were just looking at before. And so that's essentially what your podcast series will look like once you've completed it, and you sort of see how, you know, it's got the name, it's got the cover art, and then that little UniSQ, the author part, just sits underneath it. And feel free to write your name in the title as well, so people know that it's you, or don't. It's up to you. Or you could potentially write it in with the UniSQ part as well. There's a little about section, and that's where the sort of synopsis would sit, or the description of what the podcast overall is about. And then the individual episodes look like that. Yeah, so anyway, I think that's probably everything that needs to be covered as far as uploading of a podcast goes. And yeah, as I said, there's a computer downstairs in B116 radio producers room. Yeah, and you can upload it there, or, you know, if you for some reason can't make it in, then yeah, we can sort it out from our end. But anyway, that's essentially how it looks, and that's how it works. And does anyone have any questions? Alex?
Is it also linked to YouTube, or would I just upload mine if I want to put them on the YouTube channel separately?
Yeah, so I guess that's probably that's actually not a bad question to ask.
Because I know that you said this is only linked to like some things, and you have to link it if you want to YouTube it.
So how it kind of works is in the back end, which I didn't go through because it's kind of a
it's either that, or I'll just record them as a podcast as well and just put the podcast on YouTube.
I'll show you sort of how it works before. So this is the main feed. And so basically you can create more of these feeds. And these feeds are what kind of go from Megaphone out to the platforms. So this feed here specifically is going to Spotify. So that's kind of how it works. So they're called RSS feeds. So yeah, you can create one for YouTube, and then it would also go to YouTube. I don't know if you can use the same feed for two different places.
Right.
I'm not entirely sure.
It might be easier to just upload it separately. If I also then give it like a video-esque, like audio wave file type thing.
Yeah.
It's a video on YouTube.
You may want to treat it like that for your specific circumstance. Kind of the reason if you looked at the stats at the moment, most people are releasing things on Spotify because Spotify is software agnostic. You can use it on any device. People still listen to, podcasts and things on Apple Music, but only half of the people in Australia are listening to Apple Music because the other half can't, because they're, on an Android device of some sort or PC. So yeah, theoretically, Spotify, the stats sit there. Spotify is definitely the place to put your podcast because it will get the most amount of listeners and reach the biggest audience. So, but in terms of having something sitting along your stuff already in YouTube, YouTube is probably the second biggest for doing something like that. And I would probably treat it as what you're sort of saying with adding some of those,
one of those like
video wave
background with a wave file that keeps bouncing just so it's
so it's something interesting, or you can, when you're doing your podcast, feel free to make it a vodcast and
that's
film yourself.
I haven't decided if I'm going to do it at home or in the studio yet. So because like bringing everything in to like be able to read through stuff.
All right. Anyway, cool. So yeah, basically that's pretty much the crux of it, I suppose. Any other questions before I stop recording? I'm gonna get you guys to do this in class today to just start yours. For those of you who aren't here today, I'll get you guys just to do it another day when you're in. Don't stress, it's not like it's urgent yet to have this done straight away, but you know, you've got a few weeks. I think you've got just under 4 weeks before the assessment is due, and everything has to be in by then. So, but in saying that, if you've already recorded episodes, then, you know, great, start uploading them if you would like to, because there's nothing to say that you can't upload them earlier. But yeah, otherwise, I will see everyone who's not here next week. And yeah, that's probably it for the record.